Well, welcome everyone to a special exclusive conversation with the author of Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, Katie Anderson, and the heart of the book, Mr. Isao Yoshino. It's such a pleasure to get the opportunity to lead this discussion, as I've really played a unique role in seeing this book come to life over the years. My name is Stephanie Feger. I've been a member of Katie's team for several years now, so I know this book intimately from its inception, and I've seen the impact it's made on the lives of so many people. Speaking of those people who have already read your book or will read the book in the coming days, weeks, months, or years to come, I'm really excited about this opportunity to give them a deeper insight into the book creation process, what it's like bringing it to life in the thick of a pandemic, and what's next. All right, are you guys ready to dive in? I've got lots of great questions. All right, let's start. I feel like you have to always start here. And I've learned this from the two of you guys, that reflection is at the beginning, not the end. So we have to start with the reflection. Katie, you and Mr. Yoshino and your publishing team worked really diligently to release this book in a time when there was so much uncertainty. I remember it. We were in the thick of a pandemic. I want to reflect for a minute on what it was like publishing a book in that, and during that time in the thick of the pandemic. What was it like, Katie?
Yeah, so thanks, Stephanie, and thank you for being such an important part of this book's journey as well. So really thrilled to have be all together today to talk about the book and reflect on the 2 years since its publication. You know, Mr. Yoshino and I had been working together for several years, and in fact, like many years from the time we first met in 2015. And reflecting on what we're learning from our conversations, but really with purposeful intention towards writing a book for about a little over 18 months before we really dived into the pandemic in March of 2020, when the world really shut down across, globally. And the manuscript had just been handed off to my editor for a final review. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And can I even publish a book during a pandemic? I mean, is that appropriate? I mean, this is, we think back now, we didn't, who would have thought it was going to be 2+ years of being in quarantine and so much more. But really, we didn't know if even it was an appropriate time to be releasing a book and talking with enthusiasm about, having published a book. But what we decided was that, or what I reflected on, and Mr. Yoshino shared this too, is that the stories and lessons of the book talk a lot about going through hard times and managing through challenges and failures, and how we can use that as a source of inspiration and for learning, and the messages around people-centered leadership. And so much of what I've learned from Mr. Yoshino is just about being a good person and how do we manage through challenging times. I thought let's put the book out there, and it could be available for people when they are ready to receive it. And so that's how we navigated through that. And for myself personally, it was nice to have an anchor during those initial 3 to 4 months, when quarantine hit, from the time the book was published in July of 2020, really gave me some personal focus during that time to bring the book to fruition.
I remember that time. Katie, we were working really closely together. Yeah. And I love what you just said about intention. I know intention is at the heart of everything you guys do, but I love how you acknowledge that even in some of the hardest times, it's a great opportunity to be intentional. And I feel like that's what was done in bringing the book to life and marketing it and even celebrating it. I would love to touch a moment on how you celebrated the book's release, because I think that was very intentional too. And it was something we were able to do together.
Yeah, totally. And actually, as you were talking, it made me think of Jim Womack had a message in the foreword, or one of the endorsements, and he wrote it in the middle of the pandemic. And I thought it was just really spoke to this comment about how sort of my philosophy around bringing the book to life. And he said, into the global gloom of this strange moment in history, Katie Anderson brings a bright light, Isao Yoshino's story of becoming a manager at Toyota and learning while leading for 40 years. And then he goes on to say, so read this book, it'll make you feel better. And if you reflect on and heed its wisdom, you will become a better person and a better coach and a manager as well. A gift to treasure in a dark time. And that really made me feel like, yes, we made the right decision here. This really can be a gift, and not just the gift that Mr. Yoshino has given to me personally, with so many years of his generosity of sharing his wisdom, but a gift to other people as well. So first, I'm going to turn the tables too and hear from, before we move on to the celebration, I'd love to hear from Mr. Yoshino too about his experience of hitting the pandemic. And, I just shared my personal experience, but what was that like for you, Mr. Yoshino, if you think back 2 years from when we first got started with publishing?
Well, actually, when you start talking about writing a book at the beginning, it was not 2020. When was it? Maybe
2017 or so,
yeah,
where we started to explore the idea of a booklet.
At the time, I was not so sure about what Katie is trying to write, because she asked me, so you have a lot of experiences. Oh, I had a lot of experience, but many failure stories. So why Katie is trying to know, she would like to know about my experience, because my experience is full of failure, full of bad times, and sometimes good times. So it's a mixture. So I have a mixed feeling. Okay, she's going to ask me the question about my failure, about my bad days. And I don't want to just go back to those days, because I don't want to remember. I don't want to just come back to me again. But while we are talking about it, okay, Katie is not writing about my personal story, my life story, or my history, but she would like to know what one person from Toyota, what kind of life he has gone through that, and then still at my age, still working very hard. So she wants to know more about the positive side. But it took me so long time before I found out that your purpose. I knew that you'd keep talking to me about your purpose, but still, because if you have some bad stories, and you want to hide it, you don't want to share it with anybody. Even I don't share any of my failures with my family. So they don't know anything about it. Because one reason, because I was in the United States for 10 years by myself. And they came over to me a couple of times. I never shared any bad stories because I want to make them feel happy while they're staying 2-3 days, not maybe about a week. So I wanted to, I took them out in nice places and golf course and everything. So and anyways, so I was wondering, okay, sharing my experience is not bad. However, how can I go back to my old memories? And so I don't want to hide it, but also I don't want to remember. So I try to forget. But once you had a bad memory, you never forget it. It sticks there. It's printed already, just like you put black ink on the white shirt, and sometime later, then you cannot wash it out. So I decided, okay, now this is the time that for me to turn, to change my mindset, because looking back is makes me feel sad and unhappy. But looking back, maybe I can learn something out of this, because I don't know how many more years I can live and very vividly. But maybe I can learn some lessons out of this. But it took me so long time before I came up to that conclusion, Katie. Mm-hmm. So you're so not stubborn, but just all keep saying that. Okay, Yoshino-san, this is what I'm trying to write. So I've been convinced, but it's not convincing. Did not happen overnight. Mm. So that's why you keep asking me, because sometimes my answer is very short. So you wanted to ask more. Why you think this way? So that is really the first time in entire life that I'm asked that way. Mm. So anyways, so it was very, very, very eye-opening at my age. 2 years ago, not 2 years, but a little bit more, 5 years, 6 years ago. This is really amazing for me I feel very happy to go back to those days. And even now, I quit my university at this time of the year, last year. And what's today? 20 something, 22, 23? Today, see? This is exactly the time, 1 year ago, but I was struggling I was facing some struggles. So, but I just survived. Maybe because I went through all those interviews, all those been talking so many years and go back. And at the beginning, it was a little bit difficult for me, but I started to enjoy it.
Mm.
See, sorry for the long answer. So it's
Mm.
the power of asking questions in a very, very effective manner. Also, more very good with starting with good heart. So because you are not blaming, you are not finding fault. You wanted to see why I'm still enjoying my life. So maybe you must have thought that, oh, this guy must have some lesson, must have learned some lessons out of this. So that's my feeling. So it's kind of quite mixed feeling, but I'm very, very happy that I went through that process.
Mm.
Now getting a little bit stronger minded.
Well, thank you for going through the process and being willing to reflect on challenges and hard times, and to be vulnerable and share with me and share with the world, in fact, your lessons and your experiences so that others can learn from them too. And that's just been the tremendous power and impact of this book. The number of people who comment to me how much they've learned from your own experiences. And it's not just the successes you had. And of course, you did inspirational things as a leader as well. Your vulnerability and speaking from the heart and being able to share that it's not always easy, but we can still learn and we can still grow.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, it's really, really special.
It is. And just hearing you share that right now, it reminded me a couple things. Is that reflection can happen at any time, at any age, wherever you are, right? Growth has no boundaries. And I think as individuals, we try to put those boundaries on there, but they don't have to be there.
Mhm.
And you sharing just now what you did and your story is proof of that. But it's also a reminder, and I go back to releasing a book in the pandemic. It's a reminder that we all deal with challenging times. And when you just shared how, oh my gosh, why would I want to go back and relive things that I don't want to talk about, right? That I failed at, that were hard for me, that in fact, it's proof that, Katie, quite frankly, releasing your book during the pandemic was actually the right time. The world was struggling. We were deep in challenge, and it was a perfect time for people to start reflection on where they wanted to go next. And so I commend both of you all, both for being vulnerable and for moving forward with something in such uncertain times, because I think the world needed it.
I agree with you in hindsight, absolutely. And the inspiration, and I know we're sort of moving all over this interview too, but I think that one of the things this conversation where we've moved to right now is making me think of is the pivot that I made in the structure of the book. How at the beginning, I knew, so I'd been talking with Mr. Yoshino since 2015, and even from the beginning, his generosity and willingness and openness to let me write about our conversations when I was first living in Japan, and then our continued partnership and diving deeper over more years with purpose towards a book. We knew that there were leadership lessons and life lessons to be had. And when I first started the book, we were talking about what were the different leadership lessons, like go to Gemba, ask questions, be curious, but real experiences don't fit neatly in one lesson. Nor is the lesson the same that people might have from a common experience, but the lesson you have depends on your own sort of what's going on for you in the moment. And when I was able to release myself from that initial framework and really tell Mr. Yoshino's stories of learning to lead, and then how he was leading to learn and what that meant, it allowed me to tap into the storytelling and really tap into the richness of experience, and then allow other people to take what they needed from those stories and, have the reflection questions at the end to help prompt that thinking. And one of the pieces of feedback we get a lot is how powerful that is and how many times people continue to go back to the book, read different parts of it, or read it in totality, because what they take from those stories is different based on where they are then. And I think that would be the experience too of people in the pandemic. They can take from it what they needed then and maybe take something different from it at a different time as well.
Well, and that's proof that learning, that there's a chain of learning and a consistent learning that is happening, that as you grow and learn, you're more open-minded to learn more. I'd love your thoughts, Mr. Yoshino, on that topic. And as you have gone back and reflected, and as Katie prompted all of those questions that were challenging to you, the
Yeah,
different, yeah.
yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, this is really the first time in my entire life that people become so serious. People like Katie become so serious about asking questions. So I've been wondering why Katie asked that question. So no, she's not so serious about knowing about my personal history, but she would like to know the lessons I learned again. So I thought that maybe I can learn so many things out of my learning, out of her learning as well. And actually, what happened is that since then, whenever, still, right after I quit my university last year, but still, students keep calling me, and staff members. She is suffering. I think Katie met one of my staff members. Her name is Ayaka. Ayaka is now struggling with her bosses. Whenever she just she wrote me about the situation. Then I'm trying to think about what kind of advice I'm going to give her. Then I go back to the book. When Katie asked me the question, then what I explained. So it's a kind of textbook for me. Even it's about my story, but I wanted to sort out my thinking, and then I come back to my computer and write my comments back to her. And still, it's that kind of conversation with the staff members, Erica and me, still keep going. And so I think it's shown me the right way how to deal with the people who is suffering and does not know what to do. But I can give them kind of small piece of advice because I went through. Every time she cried and over a line and the troubles she is now facing, but always I'm ready to answer because don't worry about it, because I've been there before. So then I can explain what kind of problem I was facing and what kind of mindset I try to tell myself. So it was really, really the textbook maybe for the readers, but very important textbook for myself. So it's that is the power of that book. And so it's a real story. And so actually my oldest daughter, she's not staying, she's leaving back home and this afternoon, but she is the only one in my family, and she read the book, English version, the Japanese version. And because she is very, very flexible, so I can share it with her, because she has some troubles before, and she was making a videotape in Tokyo, but she has just too much work, but she quit. And so she wants to release those pains. So anyway, so she understands very, very deep about what kind of difficulty I went through, what kind of happiness I went through. So anyways, it's a small Bible. We don't read any Bible, but it's a kind of Bible for me. I always go back there. Thanks for asking that question.
That is so beautiful. And I'm really happy to hear that your daughter is getting to learn from your experiences and to give you a bridge to talk together as well. Mr. Yoshino, as you were talking, I was reflecting back, and maybe this is part of I'm going back to the early pandemic days, but when we were doing our final edits of the book, Mr. Yoshino and I worked in such partnership. Even though I am the author, he is such an integral part in reread and reread every chapter in pieces and then in totality as well. And I remember one time, I actually have a very visual image of a different office that I was sitting in at the time, and we were laughing. I had this stack I had the whole book printed out like as a manuscript and all these pages, and we were looking for typos or final fiddling words. And Mr. Yoshino, you said to me, I got so engaged in reading the story, I wanted to know what the ending was. And I forgot for a moment that it was my story. And so I loved that well, to me as an author, it showed that like there was good storytelling there, sucking you in, but it was even your story and you were getting engaged back into it, even though you were the protagonist and, obviously it's your experiences. So I loved that, that comment that you made to me. And yeah, in our final, I can't even remember how many times we read the book in June, July, as it was going to its final publishing time.
I think that's beautiful. And I think it's a testament to the fact that you're living it and then you learn from it. And when you're living it, you don't always know what the next step will be. And you do trial and error and you test, right? But in the reflection process, which is why it's so key that you do it, that's when you start to notice the key themes on what was successful. And that's the type of stuff you can pass down as a legacy. So thank you so much for sharing, sharing that with us, because it's proof that none of us know all of the answers. And yet, if we reflect, we can see how personally we are learning along the way. I'm curious, before we pivot to talking about all that's happened over the last 2 years with the book's success, I'm curious about the title. I would love to know how Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn came about, and really what that means to each of you.
So I'll go first, because that was, as I was starting to structure the book, I actually had one section of Mr. Yoshino, and actually this is how it is in the book, but I was calling that section Learning to Lead. And then I realized there was this other section where he was really leading to learn. And I like the sort of the sounding of that. You're first learning to lead, but if you're really wanting to create a people-centered learning organization, and as Mr. Yoshino has shared and is highlighted in the book, the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. We have to lead with this attitude towards learning as well. And it's cycle, because as we're leading, we're also learning, and then we're still realizing that we too have opportunities to keep improving how we're leading. And so we're always learning to lead. And while we're leading to learn, we're learning to lead even more. And so it's almost that personal cycle of continuous improvement as well. And we had several working titles. One for me was practicing Hansei, Hansei being the Japanese word meaning reflection. But there are a few reasons why I moved away from that. One, I wasn't sure about having a Japanese word that needed to be explained in the title, and that practicing Hansei is actually the meta sort of experience of working together on this book. We just talked about the concepts of reflection, but really the essence of this is how do we learn to lead and lead to learn in a continuous cycle as well. So, Mr. Yoshino, I've never asked you, what do you think of the title of the book, and what does that mean to you?
Actually, that was the second time I heard about that expression, because it was used in the Lean LEI books or something. So I was wondering what does it mean to me? Yes, but when I just look back, I was teaching in the university for 10 years, right after I quit Toyota and came back to Japan, and so I was wondering, what kind of assistance, what kind of help that all other teachers are giving to their students. I've been watching very carefully. Nothing happens. Very unfortunately, nothing happens. So students are not, advised, so carefully about their teachers. So I but I saw that, okay, that's very, very bad. They are still younger generation, and they need to be led. And we are more experienced, so we have to lead them. But in order to lead them, we have to learn something, what kind of trouble they are going through. So, it's not that we tell them, okay, what they should do, but we have to listen. We have to learn what their problem is, what kind of difficulty they are facing right now. So we have to learn so many things before we lead. So I was so lucky because I was in that situation. So learning to lead, leading to learn, it's not only one way, but it's I can learn something. Also, I can give them some advice, and they learn, and so it's two way. And if I retired and doing nothing, just only walking around and doing the gardening, then I did not learn anything, because I was in the situation where I can learn. All my students are struggling, but nobody's pay much attention. But I'm the only one in the entire university that thinking about students always staying there in the office. So again, that title is become so close to me, and so this is what exactly I'm doing. And right now, and still I'm doing that, because one of the you have not, okay, you have not met Chieko, but I was going to introduce Chieko, but she is now in Cazenovia, New York, state of New York. She just talk to me from time, maybe every 2 weeks, and so she needs some help from me. Then I look back, what kind of personality she is. Then I just try to make some comments. So I'm doing, because it's a learning to lead and leading to learn. So she helps me to how to lead her, and he helped me how to learn. And so it's two ways. It's not a one way. So it's a great title. I don't know how people started that title. Maybe John Sheck, I don't know.
Well,
But,
it was partially inspired. So I was already thinking the learning to lead and then the leading to learn. And it also, though, references John's book that he wrote about his learning from you. So managing to learn is about how do we learn to develop and coach A3 thinking or problem solving thinking, with you as one of the role models for the manager character. And this is really what it is about. It's about how we're all learners and we're all leaders. And this chain of learning we talk about, and the bond is through, it's the pressure against or connection with that really creates that chain. And so I think it's really I appreciate that, and I liked hearing your explanation as well.
I did too. And it reminded me that intentional leaders, first I thought it was for intentional leaders, but really just for intentional people. It's a beautiful blend of always realizing that you have the power to lead, and to lead for good and to lead with the heart, but you also always have the opportunity to learn. We're never too good to learn. So thank you for sharing. I loved hearing both of your all's feedback on that.
Thanks, Stephanie, too. And this makes me think of the 3 C's I talk about so much, that it's about leading or living, really, but leading with caring, curiosity, and courage. So the courage to know that we still have to improve ourselves, or the courage to make it through challenging times and to step forward and to share our failures and to reflect and learn. But how do we lead with caring from the heart, curiosity with the mind, and then courage, which is that, power to go through. So, and Mr. Yoshino embodies all of that.
Well, and you do too, Katie. It's a pleasure to get to read Mr. Yoshino's stories and get to meet you, but also to see, Katie, you put it into action as well. It's just it's honestly proof of the power of each of us and the leadership that we do and the extent that it impacts other people. Actually, that's a great segue to my next question, because over the last several years, the last 2 years, there have been a lot of great things that have come from the book. I want to take a minute and dig into them. The book has received some amazing accolades. Katie, can you give us like a high level or a deep dive into them? Because there's a ton.
Well, first and foremost, the biggest accolades that we could ever receive are the personal messages of the impact the book has had on other people. So many people reach out to me personally to share how much the book, or even the classes or the workbook, but everything about the message from this book has really helped them become better people and to manage through whatever challenges are in front of them, helping them have the impact that they want. And so that's just the most meaningful. At the time of us recording, we have over 200 5-star reviews on Amazon. The book's received the International Impact Award and has been shortlisted for a few awards that we'll probably be able to announce soon. The Eric Hoffer Award, the Reader's Choice Award. And it's really exciting that the book has been translated and is available in Spanish, translated by the Lean Institute in Colombia. Just this month at the time of, or just this spring, was released in Polish by the Lean Institute in Poland. And it's out in bookstores across Japan, which is so exciting, with Cross Media Publishing, who translated the book into Japanese. And we have a nice Japanese cover here too. And that's been so fun. Mr. Yoshino has been sending me pictures of him standing in bookstores holding up the book, and some friends and colleagues across the US or across Japan as well. So that's really exciting. And but really just the individual impact that the book's having. Oh, and universities saying, Mr. Yoshino said it's his personal textbook. Universities who are purchasing the book and using it as a textbook in their business schools to teach about leadership and lean management, not just a traditional management, and organizations who are bulk buying the books because they see this as the accelerator to creating the culture that they want in their organization. So that is just so exciting to me. And it's a real celebration that within 2 years, the great impact that one book and one story and the generosity of sharing and reflection can have. Mr. Yoshino, what have been some of the exciting things for you in terms of the book's impact?
Yeah, it is. Now as I mentioned earlier, I've been talking with Polish people, and they have their, Polish version language. So it makes me feel so good, because I can talk about it. Okay, why don't you look at the page something, and then I was talking about it, and let's discuss about it. So it really can be a textbook, and it's not many of the textbooks just giving some answers, but you did not give not only the answer, but basically the process, and not only the answers or result, but the process to reach that goal, whatever. So it's a very, very useful, textbook, and also think about how the people behave, and all those, those people's mentality. And so very often I come back to the book. What did I answer to Katie's question? And this is what I mentioned. So it's a textbook.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and in addition, the book is available in so many different formats, including audiobook, right? And now
yes, we have the audiobook, which was a learning in process into itself. So those of you I've written about it on my blog and on Mark Graven's My Favorite Mistake, talked about the process and what I learned as a new audiobook producer and recorder. But really, people enjoy having all those formats. And it was it was very important to me that it could be accessible to people in whatever format was going to make sense for them. So print, ebook, audiobook, and now across these languages. And I'm in discussions with other publishers around the world seeking to bring the book into other languages. So I look forward to announcing those when those contracts are signed, or when the book's out and published too. So this is not the end of the book's impact. This is just the first 2 years, and these stories are timeless and so connected to humanity.
Absolutely. And I think both of you all are living proof that a cornerstone of effective and intentional leadership is listening. And you all have listened. Katie, you've listened to the people who have been giving you feedback, and you've built upon that with your accelerator program, with the workbook, giving people the opportunity now to take these stories, reflect on them in their own lives. And I just think that's brilliant. Speaking of stories, I have to ask, I'm sure each of you have a favorite story that resonated with you, or that you're hearing from others have really resonated with them in the book. Mr. Yoshino, I would love to hear from you, kind of a favorite story that you shared, or one that you're getting a lot of feedback on.
Well, actually, it's one of the things I really like about the book is that, like my 10 credos or something when I wrote it down when I was still in the San Francisco office, ready to go back to Japan. And I go back to that, 10 items very often because it still works. But it was not me to find it out, but it was Katie. She was so, it's very interesting. Whenever I talk a little bit about some small things, then she said, okay, what is this? Tell me more about it. Then I explain more. Then I bring it back all those documents. Then I relearned. So it's very interesting. All those stories it did not came out automatically, so smoothly because she keep asking me, what you talking about? Something like this. Just then I let me check. Then I just pick up all my data and everything. So it's very, very interesting that the questions Katie asks each time, and then she asks another question to my comments. So it's a chain of learning, not chain of learning, but it's series of learning, a little bit deeper each time. So I learned, okay, this is the power of asking questions. And so I knew that Katie is a very, 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 very smart lady and always knows how to ask questions, particularly asking difficult questions to answer. But she is so super, super good because whenever she asks that, we call it, scratching your scars. So it's because you hurt something, but somebody just scratches and it hurts you. But what a question is not hurting me, makes me so good because she just she helped me to go back to those days. What kind of a lesson I learned? I never try to learn something lesson out of my failure or mistakes or whatever, but I learned, I learned how to ask, effective questions. I really learned it. That is what I'm doing. And whenever my students or my staff member I used to work together with, whenever they ask, they send me an email, then definitely they are in trouble. So then I have to think about, what kind of question I have to ask them before we start talking about it. So I learned some important lesson how to ask questions more effectively without hurting them. Mm-hmm. So I know how to ask questions. So it's a very, very important, very useful book. That is my, my comments to the book, and it's my textbook. It's textbook for somebody else, but it's my textbook. Usually when you write some books, it cannot be a textbook because it's for somebody else, but no, it's about myself. It's my textbook. Also, thank you very much for Katie writing the book. Otherwise, I never thought I could learn this much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask the questions and to continue to ask the questions out of that genuine caring and curiosity to understand how something happened. Stephanie, your question, about what are some of those stories that really get asked a lot. And so it's interesting, Mr. Yoshino, you mentioned there's a chapter where we talked about the leadership credo. And actually, the more I talk about the book in my Leading to Learn Accelerator program, the companion course that goes through with the book, and in the workbook, I have an exercise for people to develop their own leadership credos. That story is becoming more, people are really interested in that because it's about what's your purpose as a leader? What are the actions you want to take to align with that? But the two stories that come up the most are the stories that bookend Mr. Yoshino's experience at Toyota. The first, and they're both mistakes or failures that happened, and really explain Toyota's culture around learning to lead and leading to learn. The first was the paint story, as it's known now, when Mr. Yoshino, as a young college graduate, made a mistake in the paint shop and 100 cars had to be repainted. And his boss didn't blame him and in fact thanked him for making the mistake. And then at the end of his career, which was a big a 10-year-long experience, a new business venture that ultimately ended in failure of the business being shut down. But the senior most person at Toyota, Mr. Cho, who was the president, saying to Mr. Yoshino, it's not your fault. You had to, you contributed to this. We contributed to this. We were all new to this new business. And so what can we learn from it? And again, both of those stories, one on a small scale and one on a very large scale, really just illustrates this whole point. And Mr. Yoshino's comment that the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. And I'm actually, interestingly enough, I have a pen here that I just happened to be on my desk today. It's from the Toyota factory. When I take people to Japan on my Japan study trips, we go to the Toyota factory and they pass out these pens. And on the back, it has the saying, good thinking, good product in Japanese. And that again is the essence of this: good thinking, good people, and engaging them. That's how we make a good product. And we have to be able to have failure and mistakes and all of that along the way. So those are the two stories. And I've been holding this pen, so I just thought how unintentionally, but how purposeful, how perfect.
I love that. And I also love the stories you just shared, Katie, about how there were decisions that leaders that led you, Mr. Yoshino, that made choices that led from the heart, and how those decisions have impacted you in the future. And I think those experiences and the book is proof, in my opinion, of the impact that one person can make and not know it. What one person can do and impact so many other people. Mr. Yoshino, your willingness to share your stories, I know that was even the most vulnerable ones. I felt like I was there with you listening and reading those. But it's a reminder that 1 + 1 = way more than 2, which is something Katie reminds me of regularly. And I think it's a beautiful proof of, as leadership, the leaders, the power and the impact we get to make. I know the goal was never to write a book. It was just to share your learning through Katie's persistent questions. I love that. And but you did. And through this process, your sharing has changed the lives of more people than truly you will ever know. How does that feel?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
Let me give you an example. Still now, as I said, one of the staff members keep calling me and on the line, on the Skype, and she has some problem. She is facing a problem, and there is no solution. I cannot come up with any solution. So, but she's expecting me to tell her the solution, how to solve the problem. But I don't know. But usually, many people maybe would say, "Oh, I don't understand. I cannot find any solution for you. Sorry." But no, I start listening to them very, very carefully, just like Katie did about 5 or 6 years ago. So I asked many, many millions of questions to her, and then she starts thinking, why Yoshino is serious about asking questions, because I know he knows everything, but I don't. So I keep asking. So she's wondering why Yoshino is so interested in knowing about more details. Then she feels that, okay, he is serious about helping me out. But before to give me any advice, he has to know all the facts. So her mindset is changing from negative to a little bit more positive. Okay, I have to give them all the issues I don't want to share, but I have to do that. So she starts going more details, then, and she is ready to open up. So that is the process I went through when Katie asked me the questions. So it's very, very interesting. I'm doing exactly what Katie was doing to me 5 years ago. Yeah. And so, we keep exchanging our opinions, and so she learned, of course, but I learned myself that how to ask questions, and then makes them feel comfortable to bring it up outside. It's a very simple thing, but it's most important thing that I went through that process before, So I know how it hurts me when you talk about some bad things. So I always, try to think on their side, not from my side as a coach, but on their side, and what is the best question to ask them. And anyway, so that is another new learning for me. So that I still enjoying. Actually, another student in Kazenovian, she is in trouble in getting a job interview. So I send a lot of memo to them. Then finally we have a TV, an online meeting, and then I ask many questions to her. Then she start learning a little bit deeper. So I keep practicing all those things and in my own situation. So I still keep learning how to lead.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So
it's so true. I appreciate that so much too, Mr. Yoshino, how, you've shared that what you've learned from me through the process too. And that really speaks to this chain of learning, that it's not one way. I have so much that I've learned from you, and yet through our relationship and our working together, you've learned things from me, and we've made each other better through the process of working together, both learning and leading together and at the same time. So that's good.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Katie, what about for you? How has it felt knowing that something you helped bring to life has impacted more people than you'll ever know?
Well, I really, that it really makes me just so thrilled and humbled at the same, honored at the same time. I speak about how if no one read the book, still the greatest experience for me personally was all the time that Mr. Yoshino and I spent together, the years we spent together in deep conversation and working together, not just in conversation, but like going deeper into the stories and learning. And I talk about this in the book too. There was one specific conversation that Mr. Yoshino and I had when he had been talking for months about this water ski boat failure, and feeling, I could just tell he was very depressed and he kind of felt just down talking about it. And there was one day, Mr. Yoshino, I remember this vividly. We were in my other office in the back of my house, and you had this smile on your face, and you're like, it's like this great burden was released from you about this experience. And if there was nothing else that came from the book, being able to help you reflect and reframe your experiences in a different way is the most meaningful thing for me that came out of this. And then, of course, it's exciting to achieve goals and to publish a book, and to the hearing from everyone about the impact that the book has, and both that they enjoy it from a writing and composition side, and then that they've gotten so much from Mr. Yoshino's reflections and experiences as well. It's great. When we were planning the book launch, so I'm kind of going full circle where we started this conversation about 2 years ago. We're going into the pandemic. Mr. Yoshino and I thought that we were going to be together around the world in person to celebrate the book's launch. And last time I saw him was at the end of January in 2020. I was in Nagoya and planning what was going to be 2 sold out Japan study trips. And we did a photo for the book cover, and we were so excited. We had plans to see each other twice more in Japan. Mr. Yoshino was going to come stay here. It's actually my guest room he's stayed in before, visit me in the US. We were going to have a book launch celebration in the Netherlands and speak at a conference in Canada. And we were so excited to be together so much and to celebrate the book's launch. And of course, none of that was able to happen, which was very hard, but not, there was so much other hard things going on. But it was about how do we reframe and how do we still have those celebrations and those celebratory moments. And the biggest celebration to me is hearing from people about how meaningful the book has been to them and how it's helped them personally. And so that's the biggest gift and joy.
I love that. Being able to find silver linings in the thick of challenging times. I think that's the best way to look at things.
And Mr. Yoshino has gotten really good at Zoom calls and speaking online. We were just when we were doing the interviews for the book, it felt very new. We were just doing some Skype and Zoom calls, but now he's a pro. So, and I want to share, Mr. Yoshino has also been able to connect with because of the book, he has been personally able to connect with so many people around the world, myself included. I'm, speaking at conferences, have spoken with so many organizations and individuals based on the book and the book's learning. But he has a visiting professorship at a university in Canada, is doing work in Poland and then in the Netherlands. And so I love hearing how the remote work has allowed, even without travel, Mr. Yoshino to connect with so many people, and then myself as well.
Well, I have one more question for both of you guys.
Yeah.
And I am really excited to hear, as I know that readers will be too. And it's what's next? As you look ahead in the future, what are some things that you've learned these last couple of years that you're going to take into where you're going next in life? And Mr. Yoshino, why don't you kick us off and start with that?
Well, I don't know, but it's right now I'm talking, but that the book, the Katie wrote a book that is very, very big event for me. And so I became more confident about myself. So I'm talking with Polish people, but they are facing some trouble helping their refugees. And maybe more than 1 million people just came over to Poland, that's what they say. But they are helping them at the same time. My partner, she is now coaching her students very, very, very seriously. So I would like to create more bond with those students and also teachers, because I'm so impressed with, they are so busy with their own thing, and they are next to Ukraine. So but they are struggling, but at the same time the teacher is trying to coach her students very, very seriously. And actually this morning I received the 4 or 5 Hoshin documents they created, students created. Then I have to take a look, but it's so small, tiny words. So that's why I have to use this one. Anyways, I would like to create more bond with that university, Gdansk University of Technology. So my goal is to make maybe I'd like to become a temporary teacher university for 1 year, maybe starting this autumn. And I would like to spend more time with those students, because they are so serious. Students become, I feel it, so serious. So then I have to, respond to them with the same seriousness. So that is my next goal, and expand a little bit toward another new universities. And because I can feel the seriousness from the way they work together with me, then I have to respond to them with the same or a little bit 110% seriousness. And so it's very, very, it's again learning to lead, leading to learn, that principle. So if they are serious, if I'm serious, they will feel that Yoshino is serious, then I have to be serious. And another thing is that I received an email from one of the students. He said, Mr. Yoshino, this is my personal Hoshin, but please don't share with other students, because I talk about my personal life, personal issues, but I want to share it with you. So he wanted to dig down more about the solution with me. So I think it's a great opportunity for me. Maybe I can give him some advice, but I have to become so serious about his trouble. I don't know what kind of trouble he's facing, but he is now ready, become a little bit positive to share his personal issues with me. Totally stranger to me, but he wants to get some answers from me. So being honest and being open, really, really is important to move somebody's attitude toward a little bit more positive way. So, anyways, it's so important to always go back to the basic, to learn something yourself first. Then you can give some advice to somebody else. So that's sequence. And that's how teachers should be. Learn something first, then give them some advice. So I'm still a teacher, I believe.
I was going to say, I bet the readers are going to be excited to hear that you aren't taking off your teaching hat anytime soon, that you're still
No.
continuing to learn and to share that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It is.
Katie, what about you? What's next?
Yeah. So, in this moment of reflection, there's been, we've done so much over these 2 years. We talked about, first the publishing the book in July of 2020, then creating the workbook that came out of it. Wanted to, you helped me with that as well. The companion guide to really help people reflect even more deeply and take in the practices. From that, I created the Leading to Learn Accelerator program, of many modules, and taking both the book as a shared learning experience and then bringing in all of the coaching and leadership tangible practices to people. And that's been so amazing to have over 100 people, leaders around the world, participate in those programs. But what's next is continue. I've talked to so many organizations, so I'm really excited to get back to Japan and see Mr. Yoshino, to go lead the Japan study trips again, where we go to Gemba, have immersive experiences both in Japanese culture and businesses, and bring people together. It's like my shared passion of learning and travel and culture. And of course, Mr. Yoshino is in part of that as well. And then to continue to spread the word and the messages of the deeper meanings of, again, Mr. Yoshino said, get back to the basics and the principles. In the speaking engagements I'm doing, I've been invited to, I just came back at the time of this recording from an in-person conference. I have several others, and to really continue to amplify the messages of this book to a broader audience and give them some of those tangible practices that I can help them connect the principles to the actions. And this is really what, the leading with intention is, sort of what's their purpose as a human, as a leader, who do they want to be? And then what are the actions that they need to take to create the impact that they want for themselves, for their team, and for their organization. And so I'm really excited just to continue to leverage the momentum of the book and help share its messages with a broader audience as well. So, and I can't wait to see Mr. Yoshino in person. I'm counting down the days until Japan opens its borders.
Yeah.
It will happen.
Yeah.
Well, listening to the conversation today, if I walk away with one word, both of what the book has done in the lives of so many and what each of you all have done, I really see it as impact. And I see the book has given and created an impact, but I know together you continue to amplify it. Thank you so much for taking the time to really reflect on these last 2 years, the journey of publishing a book and bringing it to life, and on the fact that reflection is, and always should be, the start of learning, not the end. I am truly, genuinely excited to see how both of you continue to flourish and continue to inspire people to lead with intention. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for being our guide and our great question asker to allow us to reflect together. So thank you. And thank you, everyone who's listening and reading. We'd love to hear what impact the book has had on you and the experiences, and how you are taking action to have greater impact and to lead with intention as well. So thank you so much. And don't forget to reach out with us. The book's website is Learning to Lead, leadingtolearn.com. And of course, I'm Katie Anderson at kbjanderson.com. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Yoshino, too.
Thank you.